afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Despite today being April Fool's, it's no joke that a total solar eclipse is taking place 1 week from today on April 8th. And that's around 3:30 p.m., give or take where you live in Vermont. We're still far enough away that we don't have a full forecast of what the weather is going to be like in a week's time, but we do know, rain or shine, that protecting your eyes from the eclipse is essential. Across the Fence spoke with neuro-ophthalmologist at Larner College of Medicine to get the perfect prescription for enjoying this once-in-a-lifetime celestial celebration.
Our concerns across the board in ophthalmology and pretty much across the board in eye care is that people are going to be staring at the sun and creating damage to the back of their eye. What that is, unfortunately, is it's damage to the most important part of the eye. If you think about the eye as a bowl, right? The center of that bowl, called the fovea, is where all of your most important vision happens. They call it eclipse retinopathy. It's actually got a name. The lenses in the eye focus that intense light and actually essentially burn holes in that most important part of the retina and create holes in the vision. It's not going to completely blind you in all likelihood unless you do massive damage, which would require quite an effort. It would be tragic, frankly, if you wound up really creating permanent damage. In many cases, it's a temporary damage, but the long-term consequences can also develop over time where you've diminished your reserve. So the recommendation across the board is that there's no amount of staring at the sun that is advised or safe. And so that's why just about everybody I know is advocating for adequate protection, getting certified Eclipse glasses. We don't want you wearing them all day long because you're obviously not going to be able to function. You want to be wearing them when you're looking at the sun, when you're trying to observe the eclipse. It would be reasonable, but you have to be cautious, to drop them down when the sun is totally eclipsed. But as soon as the sun starts to come out from behind the moon, you got to put them back on because that light is very high energy light. The rest of the day is going to be like a normal day, and hopefully we'll actually be able to see the sun that day with our eclipse glasses on, but it'll be out and not cloudy. Right. But when you're looking directly at the sun, having that protection in place is most important.
Our thanks to Dr. Skid. Did you know there's a connection between NASA and UVM? We first reported on the eclipse earlier this year when I visited with Anya Samsom. She's a senior at UVM. She works with the UVM Space Grant Consortium, and we talked about what else? The eclipse, and how she's been working on NASA research while getting her undergrad degree.
The moon is going to be traveling in between the Earth and the sun. And what's going to be happening with this total solar eclipse is the moon is going to be a lot closer to us than the sun, or than it normally is. So it's going to be kind of going in and it's going to be closer than the sun. So it's going to be kind of eclipsing the sun completely, which is pretty cool. There's also annular eclipses, which are a little less exciting, but still pretty cool. That's going to happen where the moon is a little bit farther from the Earth. So when it kind of passes through, you're going to get this ring of fire effect, but it's not going to completely cover the sun. So what's going to be happening at 3:26, as you said, is we're going to reach full totality, meaning that it's going to be completely dark outside and the sun's going to be fully covered by the moon.
And how long is the event last usually?
It's going to be like a couple of minutes for the whole totality section, but in terms of the whole eclipsing process where you have the moon kind of covering the sun gradually, that's going to take about a couple hours.
Okay, and how about if it's cloudy or rainy? Are we going to miss it altogether?
Yeah, so there are a couple different things that are going to happen. If it's going to be super cloudy and rainy, one plus is that it's actually going to be a lot darker. So it's going to look almost as if it's completely midnight instead of maybe just like sunset without the colors, which might happen if it's like a beautiful day outside. If it's really cloudy, you might miss seeing some of the stages of the eclipse because the clouds might be kind of covering the sun and the moon. But either way, you're still going to see some pretty cool things.
All right, and where's the best place to watch it?
So anywhere that the weather is great and you're in the path of totality. So it's going to be anywhere where you can kind of see the sun and it's not going to be covered by clouds if you want to see those stages, or anywhere where you're able to kind of see the sky. So even if that's in your backyard, that's going to be the best place to watch the eclipse.
Okay, we've talked path of totality. What does that mean? Why is that so significant?
Yeah, so the path of totality is where the sun is going to be completely covered by the moon. You're going to see some places that are outside the path of totality, meaning that you're not going to get a full, like, total eclipse feeling where you're completely kind of covering the sun. The path of totality is going to run basically up from Texas to Montreal and hitting Vermont above places like Middlebury and Barrie. So anywhere kind of above that line is going to be where you're going to be able to see the eclipse in totality in Vermont, meaning you're going to get those like time of complete coverage of the sun.
All right, so tons of places. Maybe if you live in Burlington and want to branch out a little, go see it somewhere else.
Yeah, you can see it anywhere above that path of totality, or in that path of totality line. So if you're anywhere above Barrie or Middlebury, you're kind of good to just watch it in your backyard if that's what you want to do.
There's different kinds of solar eclipses, and this one's very unique, but there are other ones that happen pretty regularly. What makes this one different?
Yeah, so this is a total solar eclipse. You'll also get annular solar eclipses, which is, kind of how I was showing earlier, where the moon is not fully close enough to us to cover the sun in, its large state, but because the moon is going to be a lot closer, we are going to get that total solar eclipse. And we're in the path of totality, which means we will be seeing totality for the total solar eclipse. This doesn't happen very often. The last time Burlington had a total solar eclipse where we were able to see this totality was in 1932. The next one's going to be 2106, so it's going to be a while before Vermonters are able to actually stand right in their own backyards and see this awesome phenomenon.
Yeah, not a great chance we'll see the next one. So
yeah, probably not.
All right, and you spoke about the one in 1932, and there was an article on the UVM website about animals reacting to that solar eclipse back then, and we actually spoke about it a little bit before the cameras were rolling, but can you tell me about the impact on animals and dairy cows especially?
Yeah, so they did a study back in 1932 while the eclipse was happening to basically see if the animals were going to react in any, really unforeseen special way during the eclipse. What ended up happening is most animals kind of just went quiet, acted as if it was nighttime, they're kind of just seeing all the light go away and thinking, oh, it's time to go to bed. Some birds would chirp a little bit, as maybe they would do in the normal nighttime. Some dogs might get a little more rowdy, but nothing kind of extreme. So they didn't end up finding anything super compelling in that study there. But if you have, dogs, cats, any sort of pets, you shouldn't really have to be worried about the way that they're going to react. It's not going to be anything near as startling as the 4th of July fireworks. They might just even go to sleep and, settle in for the day.
Absolutely. And obviously you weren't there at the time, but your knowledge of the experience, did crickets come out? Was it fully nighttime?
There were some crickets chirping that were noted in there. So if you want to look, there's actually a bunch of different articles online about the research happening in 1932, and as you said, they were on the website, so people can look at that. It's pretty cool.
All right, and a little bit, it's around 3:30 area. That's a little bit around when kind of rush hour traffic starts. Is there any guidance for if you're behind the wheel?
Ooh, so if you're behind the wheel, I would say, make sure that you can see everything. I would really caution people to not be driving when the eclipse is actually happening. Maybe pull off to the side of the road so you're not trying to look up and see the eclipse while you're driving around. We don't want to have any sort of accidents or anything like that. So,
sure, yeah, we don't want to miss it.
Right, you don't want to miss it because you're trying to look and then, have a car accident. So if you do happen to be driving at 3:20 on April 8th, make sure that you pull over to the side of the road just for at least a little bit of time so you can kind of let the eclipse pass, watch the event of the century, and then you can get back on the road once it starts to clear up a little bit.
Sure, if your boss is upset or something,
right.
You don't understand.
Be like, it's the eclipse.
The next one isn't until...
I'm not going to see the next one in
Absolutely.
here.
That's good advice. So turn your headlights on.
Make sure it's bright enough for you to see when it starts to kind of darken,
Sure, absolutely. And since you won't be behind the wheel, what are your plans for the eclipse?
Yeah, so I'm going to be on UVM's campus. UVM is going to be hosting events, but they're only for faculty, staff, and students. So we're going to have things like Eclipse seminar series. We're going to have a keynote speaker, and then of course viewing stations. So we're going to have events on campus. There are also going to be events kind of all over the state in that path of totality. So you can look up online. I know different websites will have different lists of things that are going on, maybe live music, maybe some food trucks. So there's going to be a bunch of events kind of across the state for everyone to go to, even if they're not a UVM student or employee.
All right, and of course, like we said, if you miss this one, you've got a while to wait before the next one. What do we know about the next eclipse coming up? Yeah,
so the next total solar eclipse that's going to be in Burlington and in Vermont and giving us that totality is going to be in 2106. So, we're probably not going to be here for that eclipse, but some people around now who are a little bit younger, really little kids might be able to see it. So that's the next total solar eclipse. It's going to be in totality in Vermont. There is going to be a total solar eclipse passing through Vermont in 2026, but it's going to kind of have its path of totality around Greenland, so we're only going to be able to see a little bit of the eclipse. So it's not going to be total for us, but it will be total for people in Greenland. So we're going to have a little bit of an eclipse experience, a little taste in 2026, but yeah, the next big one like this isn't going to be until 2106, so it's going to be a while away.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, still something in a couple years in case you miss
yeah,
this one.
if you miss this one. And of course, these are just eclipses that are happening in Vermont. You know, we had one a little bit ago that was kind of down in the south at a total eclipse, so you can always travel a little bit to see an eclipse. The thing that's really special about this is that it's right in Vermont.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just go to your backyard.
Right, and look at it, yeah.
Yeah, actually one of our producers upstairs said I think there was one in Alaska in like a couple years.
Oh,
so,
that's cool.
yeah, in case you miss one, you want to commute for a
all the
solar
way up
eclipse.
to Alaska.
Yeah, gotta be worth it, right?
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about the Vermont Space Grant Consortium and what NASA's doing in Vermont.
Yeah, so the NASA has all these space grant consortiums in all the 50 states, and then also DC and Guam and Puerto Rico. It's basically just a way for Vermonters or whatever state you're in to engage with NASA. They're kind of like academic based. There's a lot of research going on and kind of just connecting the people in that state to NASA if you want to end up working with NASA or anything like that. So we're here to put on events that kind of promote STEM engagement and kind of really open the doors to Vermonters working with NASA. So the Space Grant here in Vermont will have different kind of research fellowships and opportunities for Vermonters to do research working with NASA, which is really cool. And we also get to do fun things like put on events for this eclipse.
Great, and not to put you on the spot, I know you're about to graduate, and that can be maybe a tumultuous time for a lot of people, but do you have anything in the plans for after graduation?
So I'm job searching right now, which, you know, can be pretty stressful, but yeah, just looking to kind of land somewhere after graduation. So right now it's kind of all up in the air, but I've been looking around, so wish me good luck.
Sorry to put you on the spot with the worst question for a college senior, but
I know.
I'm sure it'll work out.
Hear it all the time, so I'm used to kind of answering.
It'll work out great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That wraps up our program for today. From the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX, I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.